Hello and welcome to Health Bytes. Health Bytes is brought to you by the Public Health Unit of the Ministry of Health and Social Development. I'm your host, Public Health Communications Specialist, Natasha Ladsom Humphrey. As we continue our Wrap It Up campaign, we have with us our Program Director for Family, Children and Support Services, Ms. Laura Freeman, here to talk about consent. Welcome to the program.
Thank you.
So, we're here, it's the festival, the 70th. We're embarked upon this sexual health campaign.
Okay.
And one of the key things that came up was the whole issue surrounding consent.
Okay.
So we're going to look at consent from literally the law and, kind of figuratively, what does consent actually mean and who can consent and, in what situations should people understand when persons are not consenting, right? So let's start it off by talking a bit about what is consent.
Okay. Well, thanks for having me, and I hope I will be able to shed some light because I think it's a very important issue based on the pulse of our community. Festival, everybody has a carefree attitude to things, and we tend to forget that we still have to work within the confines of the law. So I think this is a very timely initiative. Well, consent is basically consent. I agree with another person to do something, whether I agree to engage in an activity or I agree to do something for you or something of that nature. So that's basically what consent is as it relates to the law and sexual health.
Okay. No, according to the law, it's not like that.
No.
So talk a bit about the law and consent.
Okay. So as it relates to the law and consent, in the Virgin Islands, you have to be age 16 and over to consent to having sex. Mm-hmm. So if you are under 16, you're having sex or thinking about it or have had sex, it's illegal. You can be arrested and charged for having sex with someone under the age of 16. So a 16-year-old girl cannot consent to have sex with anyone, whether the person is her peer or older than she is.
Mm-hmm. Now, is it the same for boys as it is for girls? Is it the same age of consent?
So the law is silent when it comes to boys, because in law, rape, which is what we're talking about, is defined as a man who rapes a woman. It doesn't say a man who rapes a man. It says a man who rapes a woman commits an offense. So it basically just speaks to females.
So if it is, for example, that, I am 15, you are 15, and we have sex, is that still rape even though both parties are unconsentingly consenting?
Unconsent, I like that. Yes, it is, because the law says you have to be 16 and over. So even though we're 15, we're both 15, no, I can't consent to having sex with you as a female.
So can the 15-year-old boy be prosecuted in that instance? Or is that something the law, yet again, really does not clarify?
The law speaks to, like I said, rape. And there are times we have had instances where children, because they're children, Definitely. You're not an adult until you're 18. So we have had instances where we have had those situations. And it depends on, because, everything is on its own merit, right? So I don't want to give a carte blanche answer and say, well, if we're both 15 or 14, then nothing will happen. That depends on the DPP. Once the police do their investigation, then they would make a decision in terms of charging. But definitely, I'm saying, if you're 16 years old, you can consent. If you're 15 and under, you cannot.
Mm-hmm. And what does it look like for us in the territory? Are we having challenges with, stick with the what the law is saying with the older males, with the younger females? Are we having a lot of challenges now where we're seeing that statutory rape happening in the territory?
Well, police might be better able to give an more definite answer as it regards to that, but we work very close with family and juvenile, because once someone reports that they have been sexually abused or assaulted or indecently assaulted, and I think the male is not charged with rape per se, it's indecent assault they would be charged with. I stand corrected. But we see a lot of teenage pregnancy with girls who are under the age of 16. So once you are under 16 and you present to a medical facility, they have a legal obligation to make a report to the police or social development. So we see instances of teenage pregnancy, and we see a lot of peer-related sexual interactions. There are instances where young children are sexually violated by older persons, family members, friends, etc. But it's not to the extent that we see the pregnancy or the sexual abuse cases. So it's a combination. So there's not one that is more prevalent than the other, but we don't have that much teenage pregnancies. For the year, we've had maybe about 3 reports so far, but we don't see a lot of that, the teenage pregnancy. More so young children between the age of 7 to about 13, 14, who report that they have been touched inappropriately, they have had some other form of sexual encounter, and those cases we investigate with police.
I think I was more talking about, say, for instance, this kind of culture here. I don't know if it's fair to say it's a culture, but I know from my time it has been happening a lot where you find older guys, 19, 20, 21, and upwards, kind of preying on the younger ladies. Yes, the ladies, the girls, we'll call them girls, the girls may be thinking that, yes, they could give consent. Yes, that's my boyfriend. It's 15 years old and my boyfriend is 21. So not per se a situation where they're being forced, but a situation where they think that they are consenting or that they have the right to consent.
Right.
Do you think we have issues like that? Is it still a thing here where perhaps the males might think it's okay that they can prey on these young schoolgirls, and you see cases. I've heard cases even up to this year where you have a young schoolgirl with an older guy, possibly living with the guy, possibly parents knowing, these types of situations. How rampant are they right now, according to what you know in the community?
Okay. So it could be 2 things we're talking about here. Remember, the compulsory school age is up to 17. So you can possibly still be in school, you're over 16, and you have an older boyfriend. There's nothing really we can do once you're over 16, because then the compulsory school age is 17. So you have that window of, an entire year. But those that are under 16, sometimes we don't really interact with the alleged perpetrators, social development. Our goal is to really protect the victims in the situation. So we mostly interact with the victims. But from what the young ladies would say to us is that, my mommy knows about it, or they're having difficulties at home for whatever reason. So, he's my uncle, quote unquote, kind of situation. So in those instances, we find that the adults might go along with it for whatever benefit it might bring, even the young person, because they might want the latest iPad or iPhone or jewelry, etc., or even simple things like uniform or groceries. So every situation is different, but it's important that parents have those conversations with their children about having sex so early. It's not healthy for them, as far as I'm aware. Among other things, I guess we could get into those. But you would also hear the men would say, I didn't know. She didn't look 16. She didn't look 12 or 13. She looked much older based on her physical appearance. And sometimes the young ladies would allow, that thought to continue. They would allow the person to assume that they're 16 or 17 when they're actually not. Because these men are not asking for IDs. They're just assuming because she looks, different on the beach in a bathing suit than she does in her uniform, that she's much older, when that is not the case.
Yeah.
And when you speak to them, the times we do, they would say, well, she told me she was this age, or I didn't know, she looked like this. If you're in doubt, leave it alone.
Yeah. And personally, I don't think that that's an excuse,
It's
because
not.
at the end of the day, they are big men. They
Yes.
are adults.
Yes.
And they should be smart enough to, protect themselves, because even though she may be thinking she's consented, when we know that she cannot,
Right.
there are ramifications
Right.
if, it escalates through the legal system.
Right.
So it will behoove the men, right, to, as you say, look for an ID. And if they cannot produce an ID, you cannot touch that.
Right. Just leave it alone.
And just leave it alone. And it was interesting that you said regarding, parents' involvement at times, and, it now turns into a question of economics.
Yes.
And, almost like you're pimping your child in a
Almost.
sense,
Yes. Yes.
Um,
But it happens. That is part of what happens. Those are the things that we deal with. Those are the type of reports that we see, and in those instances, then we would offer the parents support, some type of social support, because, we have a program at the department, a social assistance program. So we would offer them support to pay rent or groceries, uniform, whatever that they might need. So we provide some type of intervention for the family once we are aware that this is happening.
And what type of psychological impact, as you say, your department is responsible for, the care of the victim. So what type of psychological, if any, you're seeing, resulting from those types of economic relationships?
Well, some may be traumatic, right? Some may be consensual, as you say. They know what they're doing and they're just going along with it until the law finds out, basically. Then there are those that they really don't want to be part of it, but because of circumstances, that is what is happening. So we refer them to counseling to receive psychiatric intervention with trained doctors, so that they can have a prescribed form of treatment to understand why they would engage in such behavior. And it's important that we pour into our children from young that they are beautiful, talk to them about their self-worth, their self-confidence from a very young age. It's important that the men in our homes, because as women, we cannot, get children on our own. Every child has a father, right? Whether he's active or not. And it's important that men are active in their children's life, especially their girls, because you always hear persons say that a girl, first love is her dad, because her dad is the one that shows her how her husband should treat her. So we need to have our dads or fathers back in our homes, more involved with our girls, to let them know that you can wait, set your goals, get your education, and these things will come.
And it goes back to the whole, I'm glad you're from social development, because it's going to veer off a little bit, because you said some very interesting things that, we have a lot of broken homes. We
Yes.
have a lot of homes with multiple fathers. We have, then there's, the mother's boyfriend or the
Yes.
mother's husband. And then you have, sometimes these children come into contact with a lot of different men.
Yes.
And sometimes you don't know, what the men are doing,
Right.
whether the mother know or not. That's another question, and how it's affecting these children. And back to the thing that you said with fathers needing to be in their children's lives, especially their girls, because, they're going to look to how that relationship unfolds to help them to navigate,
Correct.
romantic relationships,
Correct.
right? So from the social development department, where you guys, have a lot of focus as well as co-parenting and building those healthy bonds between parents and, kind of reuniting them, in the best interest of their children.
Correct.
What would you say to encourage that, so that we don't end up in situations where, our girls are at a disadvantage because they're being molested, because they're being, pimped, for lack of a better term. We don't put them in these unhealthy situations, because 5, 10, 15 years down the road, generations down the road, we're going to see the effects.
Correct. And let me just piggyback a bit. I did mention that fathers need to be part of their children's lives, but I need the women and the mothers to allow the fathers who want to be part of their children's lives to encourage that. Because we can, it can happen where, because the relationship has ended and it goes into your question about co-parenting, I don't want anything to do with you, so therefore you can't have anything to do with my child. And it takes a lot to get over emotional damage from a relationship to now get to a mature parenting relationship. And that is one of the reasons why we at the department, we stress co-parenting relationships, because we understand the importance of it for the children. We had a very, I know in the communications world, they say not to say success because you can't really measure it. However, in April, I would say we had a very successful co-parenting seminar with two very known mature individuals who co-parent well. And I say was successful because it was very well received, and the feedback that was given to us, that persons would want to see more of those things coming from the department. Mm-hmm. And it showed an awesome dynamic between a male and a female and how to approach parenting. And those are things that we need in the community, especially in our families.
And we want to encourage that, because that's the nail right there, because sometimes, these children want that other parent. Mm-hmm. And like you said, sometimes it's the women, bitter and jealous, but some just as much is the men too, from time they stop having access to the mother physically.
Yes.
Is a problem.
Yes.
Or if the relationship ends bad, it's like, okay, I hate you more than I love my kids.
Yes.
So I pull away. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of situations where both persons are at fault.
Yes.
And, you have children though. You cannot allow them to grow up on the wrong path because of your childishness.
True.
Yeah. So we definitely, we have to work on that. We have to work on building these healthy co-parenting relationships so that our children don't end up, being in these types of situations. Now we enter the 70th. We enter the 70th free up time. Everybody doing what they want, and the children ain't no different. You know, sometimes you tripping up over them when you go in. You know, I remember last year I was in the village, and here comes my son and his friends a little close by to me. I was like, time for me to go. Time for me to go. So they're out there as well. And, what advice would you give to those young people who out there, and by all accounts, what I'm hearing now is these young children, despite, our age to drink here is 18, they're getting access, they're drinking a lot, and they are out there while in the streets. Talk a bit about, what you would tell them this festival season in terms of consent and the ability to consent or not.
Based on research, it shows once you're drunk or some other substance, you can't think properly. You're not able to negotiate. You're not able to drive. You're not able to do all these things. And I say driving for the older set, but you have to be mindful. I remember one year we received a report of a young man who ended up in hospital because he drank so much. The blood, the alcohol limit in his blood was over. I can't remember whatever the legal amount was, and he was a very young person, right? So the booth owners and other persons who serve alcohol, but of course, we're very crafty, so I might send you to the bar for me, but it's for a young person. So we have to be mindful about who we're serving alcohol to as well during the 70th celebrations. But if you're not ready to have sex, in particular, don't. I saw a report, I think it was sometime in June, that the HIV/AIDS and STD is on the rise in the Virgin Islands. I think it's about over 200 and something cases in 5 years. So do we have condoms available for these persons over 16 who might want to have sex? Do they know where they can go and get one if they need one? Right? So these are things that we need to not bury our heads in the sand about in our community, because we know that the over 16s are having sex. So where are they going? How are they going to protect themselves? Are we making things accessible for them to do that? Or are we just saying to them, don't have sex? Don't have sex, but where are the tools to help me, to make responsible decisions? Where are the conversations that if I have sex too early, what is going to happen to me? Emotionally, can I deal with it? Physically, can I deal with it? So these are the consequences. Why do you think you need to do this at this age? So these are conversations as parents we need to have with our children. Yes, they are difficult. And, I guess when you and I were growing up, Natasha, we couldn't have these conversations with our parents. At all. But times have changed, thankfully.
We hope. Because I still don't think that person's parents are talking to their children. So in as much as time have changed, it's still the same, because the ignorance from all forefathers are being perpetuated through the generations. So nobody didn't talk to you. Well, my mother tell me nothing.
So, but then it stops with, that's how generational causes stop. It didn't happen with me, but I'm going to stop it with my children, so that my generations after me wouldn't have the same fate or the same experience that I had. So we have to make a conscious effort that we are going to stop it. So if I need to have a conversation with my child about why you think that you're ready to have sex, talk to me, what you're feeling, what you're going through. Why do you think you need to do it? Are you being pressured by peers? Are you being pressured by someone else? Is someone forcing you? And you would be surprised at the level of conversation, and your children would be happy to know, Mommy want to talk to me about this, Daddy want to talk to me about this. And you're the right one to give them the proper information than their peers.
Definitely.
So it's best that you have the conversation, as difficult as it may seem, because even you may not have all the answers too. So there are agencies out there, social development, police, health, that you can reach out to get answers to any questions that you might have. But we need to have those conversations.
I am totally feeling you right now. I feel like you're my kindred spirit. Because everything you say, I feel like I embody that. And, I talk to my peers a lot. We have teenage children together and what's not. And, it's not enough to say don't have sex.
Right. It's not.
It's not enough. But not too long ago, you were in high school. You know what will go on. You understand? So why you out here acting brand new?
Right.
Don't do that. So you don't want your child to have sex. Nobody wants their child to have sex.
Right.
Yet we know
that they're having
out here.
sex.
Yes, we see.
Yes.
We see.
Yes. We see the
see
stats.
that they're out here having sex,
Yes.
right? So what I tell my peers is that, okay, it's okay to say don't have sex, but when you know for sure they're having sex, you have to change the message. You can't be on a message about not having sex when you know your child, or you have a feeling that your child is having sex. So you have to change your message with the changing child. And I think that we don't wait till they're teenagers because they're not going to feel comfortable talking to you about that sort of things, you know? Like, because it's going to feel weird.
Yes.
So it's like you have to, you know, from a certain age, you get them into, come talk to me, come, I want to know. I had to stay involved in my children's affairs, right? I stays involved. So you come, I want to build that rapport because ever since I was a child and thinking about when I become a parent, what I want, blah, blah, blah.
Right.
One of the things I've always wanted is that closeness and that communication that I didn't have. Not the closeness, but the communication with my mother. And, you know, I vowed that they're not going to learn things on the street. They're going to learn from me where I could guide them. Where when I see them going in the wrong direction, I could say, hey, no. Brakes, pump them quick. That's not it. And I could show them. Because if you trying to learn, I trying to learn, what we really teaching each other.
Right, exactly.
So
and you're right. If you start early and you can start having conversations, you know, asking about school, we know at a certain age, boys and girls are naturally going to be attracted to each other. There's nothing we can do about that. That's how the world works. That's humanity. So if you have a child in high school, instead of just asking about school, you know, talk to me about your friends. Is there any boy in school that you see, you know, you interested in, any boy interested in you? Is there any girl, you know, interested in you, etc.? And you would get the conversation because it happens all the time, you know, with the young people that I interact with. At first, they might be timid, but then they would come around and say, you know, I had this boy. He told me he liked me, but, you know, I don't like him because he too old, or he don't do his schoolwork, or he lazy. And it starts the conversation. And then you can build on that. So you're right. Don't wait until they're at the point, or you find condoms or whatever in their pockets or in their bags to come down on them about having sex. It should start from at that point of development when you know that attraction is there.
Yes, and of course, they could always get free condoms from the Ministry of Health.
Good.
We're located on the 3rd floor of the Property Union building, which is right next to Happy Lion. You can come up there. You can ask for Nurse Hannibal, and she will be happy to assist you, get you as much condoms as you need to help keep you and, you know, your person safe this festival season. Well, Ms. Fremont, always a pleasure.
I know, right? We just go on to so much things.
Well, you know, you've given us a lot of food for thought, clarified a lot of things for us, and basically help us to begin a conversation what should be continued at home. So final thoughts?
I just want to reiterate too that the law differentiates. So there's a penalty for sexual intercourse with a girl under 13 and a girl under 16. So there are different penalties. My final thought, I know it's festival season. We are all free, literally and figuratively. We want to have an awesome time, but we need to be responsible, especially our young people. And the men that are out there, if you see a young lady and she looks much older than she is, I wouldn't approach her. I mean, you don't want to get yourself caught up in the middle of anything or a fine line, you understand? So when it comes to age of consent, just a reminder that it's 16. The age of consent is 16. And everyone needs to be careful as to, who they approach and what happens. Because 9 months from now, you don't want to find yourself being a parent and you didn't plan to do it, or, with a STD, which is on the rise in the community. So I would just encourage everyone to be safe for the festival season, and safety includes sexual safety as well.
Yes. Once again, thank you for coming on the program.
Thank you.
Ms. Freeman. And we want to thank you for tuning in to this very informative Health Bites edition, where we talk about consent according to the law. We didn't go too much into, vulnerabilities due to alcohol, and, if she says no is no regardless of the age. But we do encourage females to stay safe, know your limit, balance your water to alcohol intake, surround yourself with a group of trusted friends. So you have your tribe, your camp, your people to, if you falter a bit, are there to have your back. But at the end of the day, your safety rests with you and you alone. So ensure all you have to do to keep yourself safe for the 70th. So reporting for the Ministry of Health and Social Development, I'm your host, Public Health Communications Specialist, Natasha Humphrey. Thank you for tuning in, and please share the information.